When you're like me and you like to solder things on a PCB board, just some surface mounted devices, oftentimes you need to use Flux, like this white Flux, which I've been using and enjoying a lot. I bought this from AliExpress. Uh, and it comes with one of these little things. I've heard these things described with different names: a plunger, a rod, a booster, a pusher. I think I'm going to go with plunger because it plunges in here. These things are somewhat flexible. They're kind of cheap. They have a little rubber thing on the end. They're disposable, and they come with almost any syringe. I usually put a kind of a smaller size needle because I like to have a lot of control, and oftentimes I will use very small components on a board. And the smaller the needle, the better. The thing is, there's any number of advertisements where people will advertise and push other plungers. There is this plunger which is just made out of aluminum. It does exactly the same thing as the plastic one, but it's more sturdy and it also has this little collar on it. And that collar fits nicely in here, which will keep the plunger somewhat straight when it works. And I've used this one a lot. I really enjoy using it. The next one is this one. This basically works, as you can imagine, by turning this little bit right here will move the plunger up and down. And it takes quite a few turns to move this plunger an appreciable degree. The thing is, if you're putting a small amount of solder on, it doesn't take very many turns to start pushing solder out. The thing with this one is if you twist it a few times, it'll start pushing solder out. That pressure stays inside the syringe. In other words, turn it a little bit and then you don't do anything, and that flux is going to keep coming out for a while. You have to untwist it to release that pressure. So this is really nice if you have an application where you are focused on where the needle is. You don't want to push anything. It's kind of delicate, and solder can come out, but you can always untwist it to make the solder stop. I find this challenging. I like it. I really love the way it looks. I thought it would be a little bit more responsive. In other words, more turns from the metal disc at the top would, or at least fewer turns would equal more pressure in the tube. But I can see how that wouldn't be the case. It is actually not an easy turn. You actually can feel it. It gives a bit more control at times, but it also is probably the most difficult to use, if I could say it that way. And this is what I just got as a newest one. People have recommended this. Um, I'm planning on trying it out in this video, but it is basically put the syringe in, put this here, twist the bolt so that it's far enough, and then you can see that even with the maximum amount of pushing, it's got a small amount of travel, which means it won't take much pressure on the trigger to push some flux out. And this is a very simple device. I am fairly certain you could find any number of these, or you could just 3D print one. I think that there are a lot of things out there. They're inexpensive. This is literally just a long bolt, and at the end of this, another bolt with a smooth cap end on the tip. So easy enough to make. I think that you could easily find the parts for it, but they're also insanely inexpensive. So maybe easier just to buy one as well. With that, I'm going to push this under the microscope. I think I'll take this little board here. I'll take off this little chip, clean up the pads, and just solder back on. Um, and I'll use each of these plungers just to see how it looks. All right, just going to put a little bit of flux. This is with the default plastic plunger that came with the syringe. And yeah, things are a little bit wobbly, but gives good control. Um, it works. Gonna put some hot air. This is 350 degrees Celsius, about 50 degrees airflow, or 350 degrees Celsius, and airflow setting of 50. It's going to heat up around this, let the flux do its job. Once I start seeing that solder look shiny, and I'll move the in and it's off. All right, a little bit more flux. It comes out pretty easily if small needle using my hand, not allowing a lot of pressure, but no complaints with it. All right, I'm just going to clean this up. And just to make certain that this is ready to go for the next one, I'll add some more flux with the plastic. See how sometimes I want to use two hands um, when I am doing this because this little thing has a lot of play. And so that removes a little bit of the exactness of it. All right, clean this off with some isopropyl alcohol. And there we are. Perfect pads for continuing on. With the default one, I tend to have to hold the syringe with one hand, or at least a couple of fingers, and then the plunger and the base of the syringe with the other hand, and I squeeze my hands together to get everything to push out of the syringe to give it the most control. See if it's the right orientation. I think this is the right orientation. It doesn't really matter because I'm just going to be taking this off over and over again. Right. There are a couple of ways to do this. I guess the safest way is to heat this thing up, let the wax melt. Sorry, not the wax. Let the solder melt, and then put the chip on it. But this is a chip is not as delicate as say a diode or a LED. So I'm just going to put it in place, heat it up, flux is there, and let it pull itself into place. I'm just going to keep this at 350 degrees Celsius. Let's see, the pads are really starting to go through. I'm just going to give it a small tap. Let's switch to the aluminum one. So this one has this little collar that goes in place, which kind of holds it so it's a bit more steady. And if I'm going to put some flux on here, this one, it's very similar to the plastic one. I feel like there is a slight extra amount of control. It's a bit more steady. Things are more rigid. Allows me to go a little bit more slowly. I would say this is definitely an upgrade, and for the cost of these things, which is roughly $2 to $3, well worth it if you're going to do something delicate. Add some more flux. Yeah, I really like this one so far. It's been my favorite to use. Is the aluminum push rod, the plunger that is made out of metal. Remove all of that. Add a little bit more flux. Retin the pads. Clean this up. Next up, I'm going to go with this one. But this goes here. This may be a bit longer, a bit bigger than is needed. It locks into place. Now I'm just going to start turning the big metal disc in the back, and it starts to come out. All right. You see, it's a little bit slower. And the thing with this is I'm not turning anything. I'm not pressing anything. It's just still coming out. Now I'm going to unturn it, turn it the opposite way to relieve the pressure. And that's the big difference. But it gives like a different timing, I guess, is the best way to describe it. Put this in place without making a big mess. See if that's possible now. I think that's about right. Let's find out. Ooh, maybe a little bit too much flux came out. It's starting to flow away. All right. Yeah, so that's maybe the difference. This did give a little bit too much flux, but I think I could have controlled that a bit more. If I do this again, it's going to keep turning to add some pressure in the middle. You see it comes out. It's coming out in kind of a weird way. I don't know. I'll take the pressure off of it by turning the opposite direction. Heat this up, take it off. As I see things become shiny, let's pick it up. Or it's getting a little hot. Let's do the last one, which I am really excited to test out. This one takes a little while to put into place because you put the syringe in, and then you've got to slowly wind this thing down to where the flux begins, and you'll see at that point you can start using it. All right, so I'm just going to add some flux with this one. This is by holding it and squeezing it with one hand, and I would say that is actually really nice. It doesn't take a lot of pressure. I can let off the pressure, but it's a one finger operation. I don't need to use two hands on the syringe. That by itself probably makes this more of a desirable solution. Oftentimes, I wish I had three or four hands when I do this work. When I do this work, I call it work. I enjoy it too much. When I do this activity, this hobby, with the it's getting a little sticky. Oh my god! All right, somewhere around there. I feel like this one has the least amount of flux on it. Probably the easiest to control. Let's see what happens as we just kind of heat it. The chip wants to move. Yeah. And of course, just to finish this off, I'm gonna just one-handed grab this in just the weirdest way and see how easy it is. Yeah, this is actually insanely easy way to put Flux on the board without having to use two hands. I'm just adding a little bit of extra flux just to reflow a little bit. Just want to see all the solder joints become a little shiny. Tap down just a little bit. Looks great. Okay, outside of the microscope, I just wanted to show this. This, of course, can be adjusted so that it is further down, further up. I did notice if you are unscrewing this, the little bolt in here tends to come out. So you have to be careful with that. But with this, I can squeeze like this with one-handed, just to let a little bit of flux out. I've got a lot of control with it. I can also do it like I'm using a pencil, which also gives me a level of control that I'm not used to. Um, whereas with almost everything else, I tend to use a different hand gesture. I'll show you what that looks like. If I can get this off, it takes a while, just as you can see. With something like this, the fastest to put into place and use right away, but I tend to hold with two hands, one for plunging, one for control, and that gives me the control I need. And I can do this using this one with one hand. So I think going forward, I'm probably going to use this as my default. And if I have to do something quick, down and dirty, I use this aluminum one. I'm not really certain when I would use this one. I can definitely see there be a case where I'd want to do something where I'm not paying attention at all and just wanting to add pressure to something, but I don't know. Maybe if something was very difficult to get out of a syringe or a different type of flux, it might work out a little bit better. I could see also a very light, very viscous, something that would flow very easily. I could see something like this would be a little bit easier to use. Also, if there was something that didn't have a plunger at all or a little stopper in the bottom, this would take the place of that. And I think that would be a reason I'd use this one. But that's it. I hope this was informative. I hope people enjoyed it. Thank you.